Caleb Williams to me is the clear 101 in a tier of his own at the top of your 2024 Superflex rookie drafts. In Dynasty, there is not a better confluence of, underlying talent at the position and situation. I am all for betting on Caleb Williams. If you don't like the personality, I don't know what to tell you. Want to knock, play, leadership, Monday morning leadership guy? I don't know what to tell you, okay? We're talking football. We're talking the potential to score points in a fantasy manner. And at the end of the day, I look at Caleb Williams. He has every opportunity to produce early, to potentially be a top 12, a top, effectively quarterback one in his rookie year. And beyond that, well beyond that, to be a possible 101 startup pick. We're talking about a guy that has a Rome Odunze to be his long-term partnership, quarterback to receiver duo that will be lethal for years to come. I am not forcing a Marvin Harrison Jr. pick here at the 101. That is the last thing I'm going to do. If you don't like Caleb Williams, or if he doesn't just fit into your build, let's say, and you've got quarterbacks already, trade back to the 104, 105, collect a meaningful first plus. Do not just sit and pick someone other than Caleb Williams at the top of your rookie drafts. Come with your pitchforks in the comments. I'm already expecting it. In tier 2 for me, it's a group of 6 guys that all have in their own right top 3 type potential at their relative positions. Brock Bowers already being there, but talking about relative, the relative positional valuation has led me to rank, yes, Drake May and Jaden Daniels above Marvin Harrison Jr. Have we not just seen the danger in overreacting in a negative sense to a quarterback landing spot with CJ Stroud? Cough, cough. Have we not just seen at the receiver position how we currently view it, who sits at the top in that landscape, as well as from a prospect being propped up and having, frankly, as ideal a landing spot as you could ever imagine in, Jamar Chase. And of course, path to being fantasy relevant, the most fantasy relevant in the vein of a first rookie year. But then the danger of already reaching a ceiling that effectively establishes expectations that in a dynasty sense maybe isn't the most reasonable to assume. Jamar Chase then repeats that for the foreseeable future. Have we not just learned, or currently even observe for that matter, how the dynasty landscape values players, values positions? In startup drafts, who goes in the top half of the first round? Quarterbacks. Who goes in the back half of the first round when there's effectively a tier of 3, 4 guys at their position? Receiver. I am not being blinded by the effective current perceived value, of course, of Marvin Harrison, the love for him as a prospect, which I'm not saying is totally unfounded. For me, what's unfounded is putting him ahead of quarterbacks that, look, I'm not blinded by their draft capital. I am acknowledging their relative talent and skill sets that are fantasy relevant in a way that doesn't come around every year whatsoever. Talking about in a certain way or another with Drake May. Arm talent, athleticism, Jaden Daniels, the refinement, obviously the game-breaking rushing upside is one thing, but even the refinement already in his mechanics, the repetition potential, for him to being relevant in 2024, I just don't understand the absolutely dire need to prop up receiver. I just don't get it, especially in a relative scarcity context when, look, Marv, he got the nice landing spot. He's got the nice quarterback. But Malik Neighbors and Rome Odunze, they have just as much long-term upside. If anyone has as fantasy relevant a skill set, it's Malik Neighbors, his explosiveness, the after-the-catch ability. Rome, being connected to Caleb Williams, that partnership for the next 5, upwards of a decade plus, they're all in that relative grouping after the top 3 quarterbacks for me. Then you've got Brock Bowers, who is already effectively at the top of the tight end tier for me with Sam Laporta. I am not overcome by his Vegas Raiders landing spot in diminishing his potential upside whatsoever. All 6 of these guys are incredible options that I've been saying. The Silky 7, the 7 heaven, so to speak, of Superflex drafts, the top 7 picks. Awesome, awesome place to be. If you're set at, say, a certain position, especially if it is quarterback. How do you operate? Well, trade back in your league. Trade back and get incredible surplus value instead of forcing a Marvin Harrison Jr. when there are other receivers that I view in the same conversation. If people operate in such a 2024, what are you going to do for me right away? Redraft mindset. That's your prerogative to capture on that. I can't account for all of that. What I am accounting for, what I am operating is under the projection-based ranking of what I see these ultimate upsides of these players. Whether they reach that or how close they get in 2024, that's a completely different question. The last thing I'm doing, though, is totally discounting the value of the quarterback position, the value of with these top three, finding your franchise quarterback, the hardest thing to do in Dynasty. The name of the game here in Tier 3, guys, for me, it's still players I view as being top 12 number ones at their position in terms of upside, but just more on that back half, so to speak, rather than toward that elite potential as Tier 2 and above. With the quarterbacks here, with McCarthy, obviously the Vikings, incredible opportunity. How often or how well he supports Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, that's one thing. But ultimately for McCarthy and his individual value, I really like the opportunity. Have to recognize him as a pretty firm 108. With Knicks, I think people will disrespect him a little bit too much, if anything, way too much. The adder behind the line of scrimmage. He is an accurate quarterback. He is a guy that keeps you on schedule. He's a guy that, for me, projects in a way to being the next Brock Purdy. A guy that's not this utter game-breaking talent, but can keep you on schedule. And obviously the Broncos are not the 49ers by any means in terms of offensive talent. That remains to be seen. But with Bo Nix, I am not just casting him aside, as I am not in any sense of the word with Michael Penix. With Penix, there is insulation, there's value baked in there if you just only have patience. And especially if we're talking here in the 108 through the early second, we're talking about effectively playoff firsts. Are you really betting on them, on these players, any player you were to pick here, being that transcendent difference maker to get you over the ledge in terms of championship aspirations? If you are, I don't know what to tell you. Why not take a swing on a quarterback bound to get opportunity? 2024, 2025 doesn't look too likely with Kirk, but his contract, once it opens up and it's not $90 million in dead cap, and he's 38 years old, there's going to be a lot of questions there. And ultimately, you cannot look past 8th overall draft capital at the end of your first round. I just don't understand why you would. You're talking about a quarterback, a guy who could rise and rise and rise to heights that clearly are not so vivid right now after draft day in 2024. But why not take the swing? At receiver, though, with Brian Thomas, with Keon Coleman, with Xavier Worthy, with Ladd McConkey, if you are absolutely loaded at quarterback in your top three especially, I'm cool swinging for the fences here with receivers that have upside, that are in really good spots relatively, to potentially be, the number one option in that receiver room in their respective offense. And so with the quarterbacks attached, there is absolute upside. I could see one of these guys, or two or three or four even, hence where I've ranked them, breaking out in 2024 compared to the late first, early second round degree of investment. I just have to put them behind the quarterbacks because of how much emphasis I put on the quarterback position and the value therein. Brooks and Benson round out this tier effectively in a tier of their own at the running back position. Guys that I could see being number one options toward the back end of that RB1 landscape. Guys that are going to have opportunities. I see Brooks clearly with the investment top 50 capital. Again, similar in a different sense though to Penix. Some value insulation there. I think with some initial expectations, obviously there's the significant degree of investment as a top 50 pick. But with Brooks recovering from the injury, I think people are going to cut him a little bit of slack. Before you know it, he potentially grows into the workhorse role there in Carolina. Dave Canales, who has a history as recent as 2023, heavily relying on a back like a Rachaad White. I think Brooks has more of a refined, more of a variable skill set as a runner, as a pass catcher, than a Rachaad White even. So really like Jonathan Brooks here, have to include him in this tier, as with Trey Benson, who is only behind an oft injured James Conner, who was only in the last year of his respective deal. And with, of course, everybody's favorite quarterback receiver duo now in Dynasty with Kyler and with Marv. Really nice offense with the Arizona Cardinals. And Benson, not before long, I think has a meaningful role in that Cardinals offense. So, like Brooks, I can't quite exclude him from this tier. Tier 4 for me, this rounds out really the wide receiver 2 types in this class. Guys that I could see, if everything breaks right, having top 15, top 16 to 20 potential upside in the Dynasty landscape. With Leggett potentially being Bryce Young's long-term receiver 1. With Pearsall, I see, of course, the 49ers system being obviously very fantasy conducive, but also currently being a third, fourth receiving option, at least how it looks in 2024. In 2025, though, this time next year could be a very different story. I think one of Ayuk or Samuel is gone at that point, but not totally banking on it at this point for the near immediate future. With Mitchell, though, he, I think, is the clear number 2 in that offense, behind, of course, Michael Pittman Jr. So a guy that, look, I was right up there with Brian Thomas Jr. as guys I thought could be the next of the group to be wide receiver 1 types in a relative offense, to be clear. But with Mitchell, I think this is still really nice value in your mid-second. With Polk rounding out this tier for me, the to weight effectively. If it's not clear how high I am on Drake May already, I don't know what to tell you. And I look at the guy who is potentially Drake May's primary receiver in 2024, maybe even beyond. I got to include him in this tier. I just don't really see or haven't seen the dynamic skill set, the projection to be as high end as a guy, say, in tier 3, like a Worthy or a McConkey. But nonetheless, still a really nice option here in your mid-second, here in tier 4. Knocking right on that door, though, for wide receiver 2 upsides is Troy Franklin, who, look, I haven't been the biggest fan of him whatsoever, but I have to acknowledge the uniqueness of the Broncos situation, his college quarterback, pairing up where they made some beautiful, beautiful music in terms of production. And you've also got really no one of note to compete with. Obviously, there's Cortland Sutton there, but who knows how long he's there for. And then it's really Josh Reynolds. Obviously, Jerry Jeudy traded away, so Troy Franklin has a lot of opportunity, and I have to recognize him here. He's right on the brink of being a tier 4 guy for me. With Ben Sinnott and Jatavian Sanders here in tier 5, could they be in tier 4? Absolutely. I ultimately view, though, their upside relatively as tight ends. I mean, could tight end 1 be in the picture? Top 12, top 10? Absolutely. But even then, still, how much of a difference maker does that really translate to in terms of fantasy points for your team? Got to include them here in that late second, but I don't really see the case to put them too much significantly or meaningfully above that. Am I too low on Sinnott? Am I too high on Sanders? Let me know in the comments, but this is effectively still good options in a very good class. That's what you have to keep in mind. When you talk about ending a second round, really priority for the beginning of a third round, it's Marshawn Lloyd, it's Blake Corum here. Effectively RB3, RB4 in this class. Guys that just don't have as much upside as you maybe would have hoped. If everything goes right, I could see them being RB2 types. But at the end of the day, there are hurdles to climb with Lloyd. Obviously, Josh Jacobs just got signed to an interesting deal there. Could he potentially be cut after year 1? That's a possibility with Josh Jacobs. And I think, look, it's more likely, relatively in this sense, for me putting Marshawn Lloyd above a Blake Corum because Blake Corum has to deal with Kyren Williams. And so am I too high on Kyren Williams? Maybe. But ultimately, with Blake Corum, I see a guy that has a skill set to potentially fill in for Kyren Williams in the event that, look, the Rams, without Kyren over the middle of the season, a 3-game stretch, give or take, they were awful. So the spend a priority pick, technically still top 100 pick, but a guy that could absolutely be more than competent and spell a Kyren Williams. So you definitely give a workhorse role too. So is that maybe reduced? Sure, that's very possible. But with Blake Corum, obviously he's on his 4-year rookie deal now, commencing in 2024. Kyren Williams, though, is entering the final 2 years of his rookie deal. And if we know with NFL teams, you want to utilize that rookie running back contract. But don't just see all of a sudden Kyren Williams completely losing sight of a dominant presence, a dominant role compared to what we just saw. When we're talking late second, early third, though, these are guys that, especially if I have a Jacobs or I have a Kyron Williams, the priority handcuffs in the entire running back landscape, really. Let me know what you guys think of these rankings, what I got totally off base, what I got maybe right, or anything in between. Part 2, though, coming out very soon, where we're effectively going into rounds 3, round 4, talking about really your sleepers of your rookie drafts. Who do you guys think those are going to be? Let me know in the comments. Who are your favorite values relative to these rankings? I will see you soon, guys. Have a great weekend.